I had some thoughts on the merits of sacrificing virgins.
Fucking hell!
Now,
straight.
hear me out.
Don't mess about, do you? I mean, buy a girl dinner first.
Stay with me. Actually, first, what's that German word for when you see like a Volkswagen Beetle and then you keep seeing them over and over again? It's like
I don't know if there's a German term for it. People call it like the red car effect or something.
Bader Meinhof.
Is that what that is?
Bader Meinhof. It's like
Bader
a frequency
Meinhof.
illusion.
Bader Meinhof.
Bader Meinhof. Yeah, you'll probably look it up.
Yeah.
But I feel like with because I was reading.
Yeah.
Well,
the Red Army. Hang on. The Red Army faction, also known as the Bader Meinhof Group or Bader Meinhof Gang, was a West German far left militant group founded in 1970.
All right.
I'm not sure if that's the thing that we mean.
Oh,
maybe because I said red car because it's the Red Army faction, and I wonder if that's because I said red car. Anyway,
I don't know. The frequency illusion. I was thinking about sacrificing virgins because of course I was, and then I read about it in Breaking Open the Head, and it happened, and it just things like that just kept happening over and over again on my trip on my camping trip. But anyways, let's see. So it also happened with Voltaire. It just came to me that we should name. We were kind of like thinking about what we should name our car because we got a Chevy Volt,
right?
And Volty was like not quite good enough, and so I was thinking about it, and I was walking up to it, and I was just like, Voltaire, and I thought that was like great. And then a couple chapters later, he quotes Voltaire twice.
Hey,
and he hadn't before.
Yeah.
I was like, I was dancing around a fire, and I grabbed this like 5-foot branch that was kind of used as like a poker stick for the fire, and just kind of like dancing with it and like talking to the fire spirits and like really like just kind of like in it and everything. And I realized I needed some more wood, so I go over to this fallen cedar tree, and I'm looking at which branch is going to be good, and I say, I choose you to be the next sacrifice to the fire gods. And then I thought about how, all the crazy and bad, I repeat, inhumane and awful things that people have sacrificed, including virgins. And I wondered.
Virgins aren't humane and awful, by the way. Just, it's the sacrifice of the virgins that is humane and awful.
Thank you for clarifying. That could have gone either way.
Clarity is kindness. Brené Brown told me that.
Yeah. And I wondered, did they sacrifice the virgins not because they were like pure, quote unquote, which is like has its whole array of problems with the contemporary spin, at least. But were they virgins because, and I hesitate saying that, because they weren't desired by the men of the tribe? Because they weren't attractive, not just in the physical sense, but like in the procreation sense? Like, was it a practice to weed out the weak and unwanted? Not saying that's good. I'm just saying,
I know you're not. And also, I want to add a potential branch to that tree, that narrative nice. There.
I like it.
Just to not completely not to completely remove a woman's agency, even in that time, from the equation.
Yeah.
Let's also perhaps posit the notion that a woman said no.
I would assume.
Didn't want to have the sex.
Sure.
And maybe, until such time as she found someone that she desired. That a potential branching possibility as well.
Absolutely.
End parentheses.
No, that's also very good to clarify and have on the record. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of it, my thought. It was just like, because like, I don't know. I feel like the narrative, the spin that I hear about sacrificing virgins is that like, oh, virgins are pure and that's what the gods want or whatever. And I was just kind of wondering if like at the time, were they also doing it for other reasons? I don't know.
There's a chance that this goes deeper than you might think, or this can go deeper than you might think. In my idle thumb time, I happened upon TikTok from a lady in her, I don't know, mid to late 40s, I would suggest, maybe 50s, who posted about not being loved and never having experienced romantic love. And that not being a choice. That wasn't her choice to not experience romantic love. And it wasn't really so much a woe is me kind of post.
Sure.
But kind of just, this is an experience that exists in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's an experience that we don't talk a lot about. I think one of the reasons is maybe it makes people feel awkward, especially is because most adults, I think, have experienced romantic love.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because I'm not one of them either, and that's not been by choice either. So I obviously watched this because I was curious, and I was curious to see what the comments had to say, and it was a mix, as you might imagine.
Sure.
But because when I've had conversations like that with friends and with people around me, I've had a sense that like people don't want to talk about it.
On which side, or both sides?
On the side, like if I, as someone who has not experienced romantic love, talk to friends about that, they kind of don't want to talk about it.
I could see that. As soon as you said that you were also a person that has not experienced, I both simultaneously have a bunch of questions I want to talk to you about it because I'm fascinated with the subject, but also I'm like, okay. That could be touchy. That could be, I don't know where the landmines are here.
Absolutely.
I want to be kind and I want to be thoughtful, but also I'm walking blind.
Yeah. And I think there are potentially all sorts of reasons why people don't want to talk about it, and for good and kind reasons, like you said. But also, I think that, I don't know, because I'm on the outside looking in, as it were, I also suspect, because I think I can think about this from my perspective, that if you, I'm thinking about like someone from a very poor, like African village, the kind of people that we see on charity appeals. I don't know that people want to spend a certain amount of time in that. They want that to be part of what companies call CSR, their corporate social responsibility. I think there's an aspect to which we want to do that, and we want to do that because it makes us feel like a better human. And I think there are some of us who actually go out and they do stuff and they help people in that way. And that's not to say we're all selfish, but we have limited capacity. We've got our own stuff that we've also got to care about. And so I think there is a moment at which that emotional burden might be, not that it's too much to bear, but it's like, I can't right now. Like I can't take on, and start thinking about this right now because everything is relative. Your problems are perhaps much greater than mine, probably are, but I have my problems and everything is relative. And so I wonder if we think about it from that, sort of point, it's like, if that's an area in which you view people to be less fortunate and maybe profoundly so, you don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time, unless you are one of those people who actually does, like I said, go out and do the things and run the charities and spend the time out in the fields, as it were. Unless you're one of those people, it might be too much of an emotional burden right now. And it's not that you don't care, but it's just like, come back to me Tuesday because maybe I'll have a bit more mental space. Yeah,
and also maybe less practice at being able to withstand that emotional burden.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like when I, they're just like working out, at times when I'm in doing more emotional burden stuff, it's easier for me to do it like routinely than when I've had great gaps in my
you're more resourced
exercise of that. Yeah. Built up that muscle.
Yeah. I was sat on, this was Wednesday night, and I had a really good day. And I had some good meetings. I'd had some good conversations, some really nice ideas for things to do with list envy, and things were just, they were looking up and looking good. And then I just went into a sort of a spiraling wormhole of thinking about being lonely in that particular way. And so I sat there on my sofa, kind of just picking at wounds, and thinking about certain unhealthy habits that I have that are really the best. It's really hard to describe this, perhaps in a way that will make sense, or perhaps I'm being defensive. There are behaviors that I engage in that are the closest I can get to giving myself a gift. Because like no one brings me and I'm going to say a bunch of stuff, and none of this is to paint a picture of woe is me or anything like that. These are just facts.
Sure. No, just describing your reality.
Yeah. So no one brings me things. No one brings me a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. I can go out and go to a cafe. No one wakes me up in the morning and gives me a hug, or greets me, or cooks me dinner, or washes the dishes, or it's not just prosaic things like that, but no one does those little things. And that is, it's weird to maybe equate that, and I may as well just go full bore and full honesty. Like it's really hard to equate that with standing in the bathroom and having a lovely, delicious cigarillo, as I do. But that is the closest thing I can get to, unless I'm going to drink a bunch of alcohol that's going to actually make me, in the long term, feel worse. Not the long term, but like in that night, because, drinking when you're not feeling great is, not a good thing to do, because you're just going to end up getting bitter and upset. But having a little, very unhealthy, occasional little moment with a smoke is it's really hard to explain how that is in some ways an ersatz kind of moment of comfort or company or something, in a way that having a chocolate bar isn't. It's different. They're related, but it's different.
Sure.
There's a spending of time. There's a kind of spending time with yourself kind of thing, like listening to a podcast that's going to make me laugh, and just having that, having that time and kind of luxuriating in it, and it's kind of indulging in it. And I didn't have any in the flat, and so what I ended up doing was thinking, well, no, I'm fine. Like, it's not. This was like nearly 11 at night at this point, and I ended up just getting into, because I didn't find a way to, hey, squirrel, distract myself from it. I just kind of dug deep into it, and I ended up going down this weird little moment of, and I did the full Gollum Smeagol, like, no, you don't need to have a cigar. Yes, but I want it. I need it. If you go to Deliveroo and get a cigar delivered to you, that's going to establish a new low in your own, how you talk to yourself. No, but it won't, because it'll be fine. Just order the cigarettes. Just order them. Go on, you can do it. Wow. Went back and forth, and finally was like, fuck,
that was incredible.
I'm just gonna do that. And so I ordered that and a chocolate bar and some popcorn. I was like, screw it. Like,
sometimes you just got to do that.
I'm obviously having a thing. I obviously need something, and I'm in a mode where at the moment, with diet, with everything else, where I'm not restricting myself. I'm taking care of myself, but it's in a different way. And I needed to not be in a space of no. I think is maybe the best way I can put it. I needed to be not in a space of no. I needed to be in a space of more. And so I ended up, doing this late night Deliveroo thing, and the guy came, and then there were no cigarettes and no pop, or no cigarillos. I don't do cigarettes. There were no Hamlets and no popcorn. Just a big aero bar, and I was like, And so I ended up, I was like, I wasn't going to eat the Aero bar. This is a mint Aero, fairly big. I wasn't going to eat it. And then I ate the whole thing, like, and it tasted of like almost nothing. Like, yeah, it was unenjoyable. It was just, it was like, I could barely, like, I wasn't experiencing it. And I was kind of fully aware and kind of fully conscious at the same time of knowing all of this stuff, but also knowing that, you know, I needed, there was something. And I went to bed and I woke up and I was a bit, you know, down, and a bit sort of, you know, little minor capital, lowercase d depressed yesterday morning. And it gradually kind of lifted. And today I'm feeling pretty great. It's a weird roller coaster living in this head. I mean, you know, I did go out and get something yesterday, but that's not really the point. I was able to look at some numbers today that made me feel probably the best I have in terms of living that I have in 3 or 4 years. So that felt real good. And just in a sort of nice, calm place of unclench, you know, and just, this is all right. There's money in the banana stand, and there's money in that banana stand over there, and there's money in that banana stand over there. That feels good. And you know, just really sort of, and I really took the time, you know, as much as I may have wallowed in whatever on Wednesday night, I took the time to luxuriate in that feeling and to congratulate myself and to thank myself and be grateful and all those things. So this is particularly apposite or interesting given, what happened this week and where my brain took me. So if you have questions, I don't think there's anything off limits. If that's something you want to talk about, then cool.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with it. With your order, the first thing I thought of was within I will teach you to be rich. I will teach you to be rich program. There's the concept of guilt-free spending, and so you have all your money allocated, and then you, at the very bottom of your conscious spending plan, you section off how much money per month you just get to spend on whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even talking about the money in this, but I'm talking about the diet. Like if you're consciously eating the fiber and the protein and the vegetables to get nutrients and getting the fat, and at the end, you at the end of your list, you have this guilt-free section of like, you know, I also want to stay sane. Like I also want to, have some me time because this is a big change and I want to do what's right for me. And I just think that's interesting to overlap those concepts. Another thing I thought was really interesting is that Margaret and I just last night were watching Sex and the City. We've been rewatching that from the beginning, and Margaret hasn't seen it. I watched it here and there when I was a kid because my parents had HBO and didn't watch me. And we were watching the Sex and the City episode where Aiden moves in with Carrie, and Carrie is the first time that Carrie's lived with a partner and is finding it very like too much. It's just like she needs her personal space and wants to do the things that she does when nobody is around and nobody's looking, and the things that she wouldn't want to do in front of her boyfriend. And she sits down in front of, she goes to the cafe with the girls, and they talk about the things that they do when their boyfriend is not around. And like, it wasn't Miranda, it was the one that's married to Trey. Oh, I can't remember her name.
Samantha's the only one that I can think of.
Yeah. Samantha was like, I'll do anything in front of the guy. I don't really care. They're going in an hour anyway. I can't remember Miranda's. And then the other one that I can't remember the name of is her. She would like look at a magnifying mirror and look at all of her pores on her face and just kind of analyze her face. And like Carrie just wants some. Oh, she would eat something standing up in the kitchen while she reads fashion magazines or something like that. And it's just like, it's little things that...
That's very wholesome.
Yeah, it's really cute. But like,
I
you
would
wouldn't...
have assumed he would have been masturbating, but fair enough. I mean, it's HBO. They could have gone there, but they choose not to. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh, Margaret and I were talking about it this morning about what we would do, and she listed a couple things, and actually I had already known about them because I've seen her around, like just kind of when she thought that I wasn't looking, and also
tread lightly.
Yeah, I know. No, she knows. She knows now. For me, yeah, it's masturbation. Like, as like nobody's here. Like, well, it's gonna come out, and I'm gonna relax. The other thing that came to mind when you were saying your piece there was generalizing, but like kind of like my idea of this here is like analyzing myself, and like I've been partnered since high school, and with only 6 months of a break since then, in like 20 years. And so I'm pretty, used to relationships and not used to being single. And I catch myself, I notice how much I do things because I do things for myself or about myself or just life things because I have this other person that I'm also responsible for in a way. Not like I'm responsible for them, but like I want...
Responsible to, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm responsible to them. Yeah, I want them to look up to me and think of me in a good way. And more than I want to think about myself. Like I just think about the people who don't have a partner and how they have to be self-motivated in that way. And they have to do so much on their own. And so there's so little sharing and so little offloading. And I just admire how much more effort and more fortitude that a single person has to have. It's
yeah. I mean, thank you. To that point, I think one thing that I sort of have become aware of is certain of us cannot afford to be debilitated by depression, because while I live alone, I also have 2 cats, and I have 2 cats because that's company. And
for sure,
those cats need taking care of. Okay, sure, there's an auto feeder that's going to take care of a couple of meals, but they also need mucking out, and they also need care and love and attention, and better nourishment than can be delivered via an auto feeder. And if you are debilitated, I cannot be the sort of person who is, and I'm not suggesting that there are options here, but I cannot afford to be the kind of person who goes, I need to spend all day in bed to work through whatever this is. That's not an option.
Yeah.
Because there are other demands, and there are other organisms in this house that cannot be neglected or cannot be forgotten, even if I'm forgetting myself. In the same ways that, like, I don't get quite as drunk as I used to, but like I could come home blisteringly drunk, and every time the cats would be fed. Like it would be the first thing that I would do. Didn't matter how drunk I was. Didn't matter if I was later going to throw up. It was when I had Misty before and when I have the 2 cats now, it's like that's what you do when you come in, because you know that it needs to be done. And
I think there was a reason why it was like one of the first ways to fail in your text adventure, your Hitchhiker's Guide text adventure game.
Yeah, they need feeding. And I push the boundaries sometimes. I push the timings, but like, there's never a moment where it's like, oh no, I can't be asked, or I'm too whatever. Like I am never too whatever to make sure the cats get their meals, if it's at all avoidable. And so there's a whole thing there about like, you have to keep a bit of yourself running. You have to keep a bit of the low-level operating system running. I watch some of these shows. I mean, I loved This Is Us such a great show. And Toby, one of the characters, has a real period of depression, and his I think then wife Kate, sort of was there to try and get him out of bed and do stuff, and he didn't want to, or sometimes he just would lay in bed all day, and it's like, don't have that option.
The way I experience, I mean, for me, like, I'm so used to being partnered. I'm used to just going all in and giving my love to a person I decide is my person, whether they're good for me or not. And here's like kind of the touchy area where it feels uncomfortable to say, but like, I feel so lucky. I feel so fortunate. Like, just this morning, Margaret and I woke up, and she was like, "I'm so happy I get to wake up next to you every morning." I know. It's the most touching, wonderful thing. And I feel this exact same way about her. And like that I can see you smiling, and I can see you touching your heart, and you feeling good about it. But also it feels like that probably also kind of hurts to hear about. I'm guessing.
I'm over it.
Okay.
Yeah, there will have been times when I was younger,
Sure.
where that kind of expression, and then there may be times when I'm less, we might say, integrated as a person, sure, where perhaps but I think I've got better at, even just in the last couple of years, really a sense of gratitude, and kind of knowing what I do have, and knowing what is good in my life, and who is / are good in my life. And so, like I can understand that there might be that sense of, I want that. And of course there is, but it is what I'm used to. And it is really, all I've been used to. So I had this thought, I think it was yesterday, I was thinking about trying to explain this, because it's kind of a compounding thing, certainly for me anyway, and possibly for other people. Because, when we're talking about romantic love, there's other things that go along with that. And if those aren't things that you've experienced, then the having not experienced that does not get easier over time. And so I was the reason I was thinking about this is I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and someone was talking about they are in, I think, probably early 30s, maybe late 20s, and talking about they don't ride roller coasters. They're scared of roller coasters. And I love roller coasters.
Oh, me too.
But I didn't always. I remember being 16 or 17, and my brother kind of, in brotherly kind of ways, needling me and winding me up about this scary roller coaster that we were going to go on, and how it's so fast and it ejects you out at this particular speed. And it was the Hulk at Universal Studios, Florida. And doing the whole bit and hyping me up, and but I have this weird thing in me where, certainly in those kind of situations, and when it comes to public speaking and various other things, I am as terrified of them as everybody else, and perhaps feel that bodily more so. It doesn't mean I'm more scared. I think, as I understand, I think I am someone who feels those emotions quite bodily. But for whatever reason, like I refused to give into that, because I knew, I think, somewhere that there was a good experience along the way to be had, an exhilarating experience. And of course I loved it. But I was thinking about someone who, like, again, I think with roller coasters, if you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you've never ridden a roller coaster, oh, look at how the metaphor's developing. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you've never ridden a roller coaster, you are not more inclined to ride a roller coaster as you get older.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You are probably, if anything, more scared of it, because you've had 20, 30 years to build up that fear and to perhaps see other people riding roller coasters and them telling you how scary it is. And you've got all that time holding the bags for other people while they go queue up and you sit down somewhere and then you watch them and they all look terrified and they're screaming. Yeah. So you've had all that experience and, you are no more motivated. You are probably less motivated because of that compound sort of psychology over the years. And that's kind of the best way I can describe, if I look at things like dating and stuff, like it's hard for me to go full bore into it because I ain't never ridden a roller coaster, and that hasn't got easier over time. That hasn't got more comfortable over time. And there's the constant fear of the conversation, which is, why the hell have you never ridden that's weird. You haven't ridden a roller coaster. You're 41 and you haven't ridden a roller coaster. Which is, may be a massive projection, may not be something, no one's ever had that reaction with me, but it's a reaction that is, plausible and thus to be feared. And that doesn't make any of that kind of life easier, when you're looking for theme parks to go to.
Sure. Can we play that out for a sec? So they say, ew, you've never had a roller coaster ride. Then what?
For one thing, I find judgmental people a very great turn off, and so I'm sort of at that point, I'm kind of like, cool, we're done.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was all right. Next.
If that's if you made that reaction rather than let's talk about that, or why, even the question, why is that? What, a natural.
That seems like a gift. Like they just let you know immediately that they're not the right kind of person for you.
We can bounce.
Yeah, it's like, check please.
Yes. Yeah, and so there's always this thing, and I think about you and Radical Honesty from a few years ago, and I was swiping through Bumble yesterday, and I was just like, how interesting would it be to put on my profile, I've never ridden a roller coaster, and we're staying with the metaphor, and because it's just a lot more comfortable for me to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually just like, how interesting would it be to be so upfront?
So you haven't ridden a roller coaster, metaphor wise, but you have ridden a roller coaster in reality.
Yeah.
And you were scared, but then you did it, and you're here now.
Sure. The cool thing is about actual roller coasters.
Yeah, you can just pay and then get on.
I mean,
it's a one-sided conversation there. There's no consent.
You can with the other type of roller coaster as well, but
yeah.
No, it's you can't do it wrong and then feel ashamed.
Man, you couldn't possibly do it wrong.
And no one is looking at your seatbelt and going, "Oh, that's weird."
Man, how do you have a lot of people like saying, "Oh, that's weird" to you, like of things that you're doing?
No, this is all,
an internal voice.
This is a lot of internal voices.
Okay.
They're noisy in my head.
Yeah, they are.
It's crowded in here.
Oh no. What's your longest relationship? Not that length really matters, but I'm kind of curious how that's gone for you, because I know you've talked about a few different relationships in our time together. I'm just kind of curious.
I'm not avoiding the question, but let's clarify the terms. What would you deem a relationship?
I mean it in a pretty broad sense, in terms of, like from first date to declaration of you're not seeing each other anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
Or even before first date, where you're like, you know the person and things are, there's some sort of interest there that you're playing around with, or even like just texting on Bumble or whatever, like.
Sure.
I'm pretty open to
that. Well, I can do the first date to Let's Not Do This Again, which was probably 18 hours. That's probably the longest. Okay. We can do sort of text-based, which with that same person was a few months. We can do the weird on-off thing that was 2019, which was the last time, and really the only time that I was attracted to someone who then became attracted to me because I think did the right things, if you like, meaning that I treated them kindly. You know, when they said no initially, I said, cool, I'm deciding in my head, like, I'll put this the best way I can. Not that I'm not going to take no for an answer, but I need to work harder.
Sure.
And I'm going to do that by being a friend and being and caring about them and being supportive and those things, and then not having any pressure and not asking again necessarily. And I didn't have to ask again because that person then said, you know, so yes.
Yeah.
That one was confusing and kind of never really was a relationship. It was a lot of things. It was lots of things. But I wouldn't have called it a relationship. The closest we got was for a couple of days where we'd had this really interesting back and forth where, because I couldn't really get her out of my head after a few things, and like the reason being, I think she kind of wanted to stay in my head to a degree, and I found some of that a little bit difficult to navigate, and so ended up having this conversation with her and kind of just reached some conclusions about myself that I think were incorrect, and expressed those to her, and she sort of said, well, that's a shame because I kind of am into you. And it's like, oh Christ, right, okay, if that's the case, then let's have this other conversation. We ended up having a big conversation, and it's one I replay every now and again.
Oh, for sure.
It was this big sort of moment of, listen, I think this might be why I find roller coasters difficult. And that's maybe why I've put a lot of pressure on what could have been something a lot simpler and easier. Because all the time I was thinking, some point we're going to have to go on a roller coaster together, and I'm terrified, rather than like, you know, we're just you know, having coffee. And so we had this big conversation about roller coasters, and some really lovely warm moments of kind of shared past, and you know, this, you know, lovely vignettes of what at the risk of kind of fully going there, of like, in the span of 2 hours, I kind of experienced everything I had want in a relationship, like all the small things. To quote Blink-182. It was the sitting on the sofa with her head on my chest. It was little aimless conversations. It was back rubs. It was me cooking, her doing the dishes, and having and it was easy. Yeah. And
love that.
Yeah. And she left the flat. I mean, we spoke the next day, and at that point there was already a pulling away. I hadn't really recognized that until we then went on a walk on the Saturday, and she said, no, we peace out. I just no. And so there was that kind of limbo. So it was a very confusing time, but that was kind of the, you know, that's the kind of benchmark that I have, really. And we're kind of 5 years hence from that now. The
thing about roller coasters is that, you know, when you're clank, 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 clanking up to the top, they're not going to just kick you off the roller coaster right as you're at to the peak, right before you get to the good part where you get a coast and give you a little taste of what's to come, and then
man,
it
was, you know, and I've been through all of that, and torn my hair out and tried, and I've never, I think part of why it's not raw anymore, but like why it's still there and hasn't necessarily fully healed over. It's like I cut my finger years and years ago, and it's healed, but it's not. It doesn't look how the other finger looks.
Yeah, it's different.
That's kind of where I am
for sure.
And I think that's because I never got to understand why. It was, this looks great. I've got a shot of, I don't like putting it that way, but like, because there's two people involved here, not just one. But from my perspective, you know, this feels good. It feels it's going in all the right places, and it's someone who is intelligent and supportive and, empathetic and these things. And for it then very quickly to be like, no, you can't. I mean, let's not do the roller coaster because that's a very specific metaphor. But to be told you can't come into the theme park and not to be told why. Yeah, it's like you thought you were there. You'd bought the ticket, right? You'd invested, and it taken you a long journey to get there. And then you get to the theme park and they go no entry, and you're like, why? I don't know. Like I don't know why you can't come in, but you can't come in. And for someone who needs to, kind of be able to understand and to be able to, okay, well, what could I have done differently or whatever? It's like, I don't know. You just can't come in. I sort of heard it the first time, didn't quite, and couldn't quite gel, and went through all these things, and I'm sure anyone can relate in different ways to like, okay, what is it about me? Rather than, well, there's something wrong with it. Not wrong, sorry. There is a set of criteria unexpressed by the theme park that I'm not meeting. And that's maybe an important thing as well. It's like, it's not like no entry because you're a dick. It's like, I don't know why you can't come in. Right. I just know that you can't come in.
And as unfortunate as that is to hear, that's also the right thing to hear. It's the right thing for her to say. She doesn't know, it's not working for her for some reason. And she's doing the best. She's being upfront and communicating, and it sucks. It's not what you want to hear, but it's also not bad.
No, she was like, I didn't want her to feel ashamed, but she expressed, shame. And it's like, I don't want you to feel that, but I just want to know. It's like, you don't know. And so I went through a whole thing of, and I think perhaps you, Brendan, perhaps the listener can sort of relate to you asking the question of yourself. It's like the theme park is not at fault, but it's like, you are not necessarily the reason you can't get into the theme park. It might not be down to you. It might be down to something, a rule set or something, a criteria that is set by the theme park that has got nothing to do with you. And so for me, there was like, what could I have done? What didn't I do? What did I not understand? What did I not allow space for? And that must be the reason, because I just needed a reason, right? So it's probably something within my control. It's probably something I didn't do, that I didn't provide for this person. Maybe I made it too difficult. Maybe there was too much drama. Maybe it was too much hardware. Whatever it is, like, it must be something I can fix. And
I'll tell you, as a person who has finally found the right compatible person, it's just about finding the right theme park. Like, there's other theme parks in the world to go to, and maybe Oaks Park isn't for you, but Six Flags is, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of came to a moment for me where I sort of said, I went up to the theme park again and I said, listen, I think it's probably these reasons, it may be for me why I wasn't, or I was kicked out of the theme park. And I think the reply at that time, the reply I got back felt so casual, of like, just didn't want you to come in. Just didn't really feel like it. At that point, it's the angriest I've ever been in my entire life. I've never felt, I've never felt, and I'm not someone who has a fun time, who has a fun time with anger.
Some people do.
Yeah. I'm not the shouty, screamy, what the is this all about kind of guy.
Yeah. No,
and so I just had this weird moment in my kitchen where I was just, I was kind of didn't know what to do, and knowing I wanted to destroy something. And I just did some like really like lame throwing food around in my kitchen or something, and just like I had a bit of leftover food and just like slopped it on the floor or something, because like I wasn't going to break a plate. That would be too much of an expression. But what I wanted to do was take all the plates and just drop each one and just keep smashing and keep smashing. Yeah. But I can't express anger in that way. It gets pushed inwards and inwards. And I think it was the next session with my therapist that has been the hardest and most draining mental exercise I've ever had to do, where he got me to address the theme park owner as if they were sat across from me and talk to them and express why I was upset and what they made me feel and how they made me feel. And it was so hard. And this was a fictional person, so hard. And I came out just wrung out, just empty, just with nothing. Mentally, like everything was like physically, I was stood up and fine, but like I took a few steps to walk to the bus stop, and I was just like, what? Why are you going anywhere? Why are you going anywhere? What do you need to go anywhere for? Like, I had no operating capacity left. And I finally just sort of started trudging on, and I went to the place we had breakfast at, and sat and had lunch there, a very early lunch. And I ordered a chili mac and cheese, and I remember sitting there eating it, and I think I had the sourest puss on, just like, and I remember one of the they're not wait staff because they do the whole thing, but one of the sort of restaurateurs walking around, like one of them just kind of walking back and forth and kind of just catching me, just looking at me, and I think just like, is he gonna shoot up the place? Is he gonna shoot up? Is he gonna, what's gonna, and it's just like, oh yeah, and I'm just sat there spooning chili mac and cheese into my maw, going, yeah, so you've got to laugh. Yeah. So
what's it like for you now? What are you up to now? You've mentioned your Bumble profile. Are you still trying to get out there? Are you like actively engaging with people? And what's the?
I think the swiping. Like, so it's a swipage. I think the swipe. Sorry, I know you've used them. I have limited patience. Like I speak to certain people, and they're like, I don't know how these apps work. Fuck off. All right. I'm so annoyed. No, I don't know how these apps work. Do you swipe left? Fuck off. I don't want to hear it. All right. Some of us have to use the apps. Some of us use the apps. Fuck off with your 20-year relationship having never used an app. Like, get out of fucking town. At least you, Brendan, you've been on the apps. You get it.
I have now been on the apps. I did not, and it took me a while. I'd forget. I literally like, shit, which way is it supposed to go? Yeah.
Fuck off. But like, at this point, I think I've used up all of the
free swipes.
I think I've completed Bumble.
Oh, sure.
I think I've reached the end of Bumble.
Not just like your daily limit of swipes, but you mean like the people that use the app. all of the fish in your local pond.
The people that come up, it's just like, none of the left. They're just, because at the beginning, and there is always an incentive with these apps to bring you good matches. And if I stopped using the app, if I deleted my account, if I came back in 6 months, it would reward me with lots of people who actually might be interesting to have a conversation with. But I do the occasional bit of swiping, and I haven't had a reply or a response or a match. The way Bumble works is if you do match with someone, they have so much time to 24 hours to
I heard that on after midnight that Bumble is getting rid of the women respond first thing because it's a burden to women to have to make the first move. And like I've thought about that, but also that's Bumble's thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was funny.
It's their whole deal. And having, because I got curious at one point, and I wanted to get a tiny sense of what the experience might be like from the other end. And so I created I think I went either to a stock photo website or I did an AI face generator a few years ago and created an account. Within minutes, dudes just bam. Just dudes, and it wasn't even. I deliberately chose, girl next door, maybe sort of, and it was just like real quick, wow. and not high quality dudes. But within the hour, I'd already had some like 4 or 5. And I had done, nothing other than exist. And so, dating apps, I think historically, in fact, I remember hearing, I can't remember who it was now, someone building a dating app or a dating website back in the day and having to do stuff to try and get women to actually join because it's so oversubscribed with dudes. Yeah. And none of that's good if you're a woman. Like, none of this is good. No. None of this is good. But also, if there are so many more dudes, then, from another perspective, it's like, to buyer's market, if you like. And so I'm aware of that. But yeah, it's not a good experience.
Have you ever considered a matchmaker, like a professional matchmaker? Margaret watches these shows of like there's Indian matchmaker, which is, it's got its own, societal things around it, but there's also like other, like just matchmakers out and about. Like she follows some English ones on Instagram or whatever, and I had never really thought about it before, but like she's brought it to my attention, and I'm curious if that's something that you thought of.
I think I'd gone as far as maybe trying to Google around it, and I think mostly just found other dating sites rather than actual human matchmaking services. Local stuff is so weird for us because, London's a big city, there's 12 million people in it. And like distance means very different things to the UK than it does in the US. You guys travel a lot more across, throughout a state than we do throughout the UK. And so, the idea of who is a local match is very different. And so I don't know how much of that works in the UK. It's one of those, isn't it? It's like you have to be someone who's going to use a matchmaking service that also then means the other person has to, by definition, be someone who uses a matchmaking service. And that just feels very, very low at this point, but in terms of numbers, but who knows? I mean, I haven't given it I haven't seriously dug into it. Yeah, it's a whole weird thing, and like I'm mostly at the point, and it, like you asked earlier, like what is it like, and it changes day by day. Most of the time, it's just life, and it's like it's not that much of an issue, but also like, don't pull on that thread too much, because when you do, you end up at 11:30 at night eating a joyless arrow.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's like the thread's not even there, but other times it's like the thread's dangling, better not pull it. And then sometimes you're just like, I'm pulling on that thread tonight.
an interesting bonus that you do get as a single person. I was going to say a free man, but that's not what I'm going to say. Is one thing like, and there's no complaints with this, but it's just an interesting thing to note. Like when I was commenting to Margaret last night, and this is a phenomenon that she and I have noticed often, is that we'll get to talking and then just like 2 or 3 hours just disappears. And we're like, we start talking at 8 and it's like, oh man, it's past our bedtime. What happened? Like it's 11. We're dead tired. And like, and it's, we had a good time, but it feels like, not like there's nothing to show for it, but it was just like, poof, it was gone. It was just like, we an ethereal moment, which is beautiful, but also it's just like, we're not working on our projects. We're not like, and that's pretty nine of me to want to always be like doing something and like having something build or whatever. I don't know, but it's way harder because when she's around, I just want to be with her and I just want to engage with her and talk about her days and plan for the future and whatever, think about babies, all those things, and not working on this project or writing this song or working on God mode or other things that I want to be doing. My staring at my pores in a magnifying mirror time or reading fashion magazine and standing up in the kitchen while eating a snack, like that's my project time. Like that's my downtime is what my work time. Or trying to multitask and things as much as possible. It's an interesting like kind of difference there, I guess.
Yeah, I like aimless time. Like I was thinking about, and this might be why I kind of started going down the wormhole, as it were. There's a music festival here that I've been to 3 times now. And what usually happens is I might spend an evening with some people I know, whether it be family or whether it be friends or whatever. And then I'll have the ticket for the whole thing and I'll go, and it's not actually that enjoyable because it's just it's kind of just annoying. It's like you can't post up, you can't just say like this is going to be my spot. And this is nothing to do with relationships really. It's just you get the same thing by going with some friends. But you can't lay down a blanket or whatever and be like, can you just you hang on there, I'm going to go to the toilet or go and grab a hot dog or whatever. And I think it was just, because the tickets are on sale now and it's like, it's not a bad lineup actually. There's some stuff I'd like to do there, but I'm like, I know me, and I know I would just kind of just be bumbling around and then try not to get in people's way and like needing to get up and go get another drink or have a wee or whatever and then losing my spot and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, nah.
Maybe you could meet someone there. Yeah,
indeed. I only think about that any time I go anywhere.
Well, thank you for opening up to me about all that. That was really fascinating, and I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you too.
And as always, correct me if I'm wrong.